Hi, my name is Evan Schwartz, and this week we're talking about some UI control changes that we made to RollaMole, which is a product or a game that we made a month or so back. So the critical changes, and I'll just go ahead and go into play game on this, is we've added the ability to take a picture and overlay that picture onto the playing field. And I'll go ahead and take a snapshot of that. Right now the game is working on accelerometer, and we'll talk a little bit more about why that's good and bad. With the button here, I can take it to where it's touch, so then I can sort of grab this. I'll wait for the level to start back up, where I can grab and move it around. And I gave it a both mode where it would still work with the accelerometer, but I could grab it and move it around as well. And just for the record, credits on the game, and we'll grab this one. This is an Android tablet, same game, little bit different size. Go into credits, go into the game.
Are you ready?
So as you can see, it's grabbing our image. I'll take a picture, it freezes the image. I've got accelerometer turned on by default. Go to touch, I can grab touch, or I can grab both, and it'll work with the accelerometer or touch. And this is the iPad Pro, same game, credits, much larger play space in the play game. Same thing, you can see our picture in there. Take a picture, puts us on the playing field. It has the accelerometer. I can go to touch and try to get that ball to move around and connect. So the salient differences between the UI controls using the accelerometer or using touch and drag to try to move and control the instance. The accelerometer is good because I don't have to have my fingers in the play space. Your finger starts to hide the play field where the ball is as you're moving it around. It's more prevalent on a smaller device than it is on a larger device. On a larger device, I can kind of use this screen space over here to make it work. The accelerometer on the larger device is exaggerated, so when I'm tilting this way, it's completely out of view. I can't tell, so I'm having to peek over the corner to try to see it. So ultimately what that ended up being is a both option, to where I could use my finger to move it around and do some tilting to get it. And what I'm really ended up doing is I'm still using the tilting, but I'm using my finger for fine control and getting it over there. So it sort of gives me the opportunity to do both. And what I determined when we were playing it is that even if it was in touch mode, I just still naturally tilted the device. So both mode essentially gives you the best of both worlds. So let's take a look at the code and look at how we did all this. Thank you. Hello, my name is Evan Schwartz, and we're going to take a look at RollaSquish for week 4 usability. We made some changes to the UI controllers. Let me get all this set up so that you can see it. So the salient changes for the camera, this was the entire camera script here. There's not a lot going on in this for Unity. Unity made this pretty simple. Essentially on the start, so we drop this on the canvas or on the object that is going to receive the video camera input. And the first thing we do on start is we're looking for devices, because what I would like is to grab the front-facing device, whatever that is, and then store that device. And because I want it to go ahead and be obvious to the user that they're taking a picture, I go ahead and enable the webcam picture. I grab the render object component from wherever this script exists and set it equal to the webcam texture, so that it's updating the texture for that component with whatever's on the webcam, and then I set the webcam texture to play, which essentially starts to stream video images directly as a texture onto that object. I have a button, it's take photo. You saw that in the previous video, and what that does is it says, hey, if it is playing, then what you need to do is go ahead and pause it. I noticed a rather idiosyncrasy with Unity's logic when it comes to Android versus iPhone. On the iPhone, when you stop the webcam texture process, whatever the last texture is sticks to the object. But on an Android, it does not. There may have been a more elegant way to do that, but still a nice proof of concept for this exercise. So we just pause it so it's continuing to feed that particular piece with the background picture. So the player looks like they're playing on top of whatever that picture is, namely their face. Manages the is playing and then updates the button text so that you can decide to take a new picture, or once you say new picture, it switches to take a picture, so that way you can go ahead and snap the picture and take it. So that's the camera piece. On floor movement, we had to update basically this section of code. So what we're doing with the floor is we're capturing two things. We're either capturing the accelerator's input based on the game mode, right? So there's a way to switch to mode, and I created where you have touch, accelerometer, or both, so that you can feed both inputs. So when you're touching it, though, touch will override in the both consideration, or if you're not touching it, then the accelerometer will pick up and will transform the location based on this. And this just, the set floor just puts some boundaries so that the thing doesn't spin out of control. So this is pretty straightforward. This is grabbing the accelerometer input from the Y and X location. I'm mapping this to X and Z based on the orientation of my floor, and that makes it tilt one way or another based on what the accelerometer is feeding back from the device. On the touch swipe, I'm passing in this directional, it's basically it's a vector 3, it's a struct. I'm passing that into my touch swipe, and my touch swipe is essentially, getting the touch one phase. It's basically getting whether or not the touches began or not. This is pretty much boilerplate code I pulled off of Unity's site. So essentially it's when you grab the phase, find out where you're at, and then when you end the phase or you are in the process of moving, grab a second position, and that'll give you sort of an opportunity to do a delta between the two positions of where you're at from a current swipe. You always normalize your vectors, and then depending on a tolerance, I'm using a 0.05 tolerance, which seemed to work pretty well from an X and a Y. So what this means is that as I'm going up and down, if my finger wiggles a little bit to the left and right, I don't need it to be that sensitive. The intent is for the user to go up and down. And the same thing, if I'm going left to right, as long as I'm not going outside the boundaries or plus or minus 0.5, then I'm going to assume you're going left and right. And that updates my directional struct, which outputs out of my swipe method, which within the swipe method essentially passes the turn. So these things are doing pretty much the same thing, except for one is using the accelerometer to move the object, and the other is keeping up with your finger on the screen to move it around, which you saw in the previous video. That is pretty much the code in a nutshell. There isn't a whole lot to this in being able to manage it and make it work. Unity does a pretty good job at allowing you to access these inputs pretty painlessly. The only other piece that we might want to go over, let me pull up my scenes, and we'll squish over here to the play area. And zoom in a little bit. Here's our floor. And you can see that's where I put the camera script, and then I'm just mapping to the UI's button so that I can change the text. And other than that, on the settings, we'll go to the build settings. I think I have this set for Android. We'll switch back over to iOS, go to player settings, and go to other settings. The other big piece is having a reason to use your camera. and that for iPhone you have to let them know that you want to use the camera. Android, just by implementing the camera, it'll prompt the user, hey, you want to let this application use the camera. So that was an extra little piece that had to be done. Other than that, that's really all it took. It was pretty straightforward. Thank you.